This is an unbiased comparison between the Bambu Lab A2L and the A1. We'll compare the speed, power consumption, noise, maintenance, and monitoring. Then we'll talk about what makes the A2L unique, and I'll give my overall recommendation. At first glance, these printers look identical, except for the size. They have the same print head, nozzle, gantry, and other printing gear. Looking closer, the print head has an extra cable port, and the purge flinger has an extra metal piece, and a wire, and there's grooves on the front of the print head. At this point, I think I have an idea of what those things do, but let's run the comparison tests, then we'll dive into what makes this printer unique with some of these features. For this first test, we'll print the AMS Lite mount. What that does is it gives you more desk space. The AMS Lite is this piece on the right side, which allows you to print multicolors or multi-materials. With the printer and the AMS Lite, it takes up a lot of space. Having two of these on my 6-foot desk is kind of ridiculous. This print will allow me to mount the AMS Lite on top of the printers, so I have a lot more room. The first thing we'll check is the speed. We'll look at the startup calibration, the time that I push print to the time it actually starts printing the part, watching it calibrate bed leveling or bed meshing, the flow calibration, and vibration compensation. On the A1, it took 7 minutes and 17 seconds. That was to level the bed, flow calibration, and vibration compensation. The A2L took a little longer at 10 minutes and 51 seconds. I believe that's for two reasons. The first one is it has a bigger bed, so it has to level more of the bed itself. The second reason is it has to heat up a bigger bed, so maybe that heat takes up longer. When we get to the power consumption, we'll see if that's true. In addition to printing the mount that goes on top, I'm printing these extra brackets for the A1 because this thing is up in the air and the A1 doesn't have any supporting brackets already. I'm printing these to see if it helps with tall prints and vibration with those prints. The A2L comes out of box with brackets, so I don't need to print additional ones. When I look at the quality between the A1 and the A2L, it looks exactly the same. I can't really see a difference at all. The sides are smooth, the top surface looks smooth. Let's go ahead and pull the supports off, put these together, and attach the AMS Lite. That looks a lot better, it frees up desk space, and it just makes it easier all around. The time it took for the A1 to print the mount was 7 hours and 18 minutes, where the A2L came in at 7 hours and 10 minutes. There's not a huge difference, but I think I know why. When we talk about some of the differences between these printers, I'll talk about why I think it printed a little faster. Let's run the same speed test, but use a multicolor print to see if the A2L is any faster than the A1 with purging out colors. In addition to the time it takes for startup calibration and overall print time, we'll add one more metric where we look at how long it takes each printer to purge out the different colors. If you're not familiar with that concept of purging colors, think of it like painting a picture. You have a paintbrush, you choose blue, you color some sky, now you want to go with white so you can put some clouds, but you can't just go straight to the white or that blue will get into the white. You first need to dip that brush in water, maybe put it on a paper towel, and then go to the white. With a 3D printer, rather than using a brush, we have a nozzle, and rather than dipping that nozzle in water to clean it, we push the filament out all the way. Whenever there's a filament change, it cuts the filament and there's a little bit left in the nozzle, so that little bit needs to be pushed out for the next color. For this test, we'll use the purge deflector. This is a 2-color part, green on the outside, white in the middle. The purpose of this deflector is when the filament purges and it shoots, it just kind of shoots out into the distance. You can print a basket, you can print a box, you can put a box down, but without having a deflector, it'll just shoot over that box. This deflector helps it stop and fall straight down. On the A1, the startup calibration took a little longer at 8 minutes and 22 seconds. That's because it had to put in one color and then the other color and get it all situated, but it didn't add much time. On the A2L, it added a lot more time, coming in at 15 minutes and 28 seconds. I noticed the A2L paused for a while. I don't know if that was because it's just trying to calibrate and understand there's two colors, but it took longer than I feel like it should. When we look at color purges, with the A1, moving from white to green, it took 1 minute and 20 seconds. Then going from green to white, it took a little longer at 1 minute and 46 seconds. If you go back to the paintbrush theory, if you have a white color, you don't have to wash out the brush as much as if you had a red or a dark blue or green because it's more pigmented. So naturally going from green, which is a darker color, to white meant it had to push out more filament, so it just means you have to push out a little more as it's going from a darker color to a lighter color. Here's where things get interesting. On the A2L, it only took 44 seconds going from white to green. 44 seconds. I jumped into the slicer to make sure the purge ratios were the same for the A2L and the A1. I even reached out to Bambu Lab and asked them what is going on. When I looked at what's actually happening, I noticed the A2L purges really fast. It purges in a constant stream, where the A1 purges a tiny bit and a little more and a little more, and it pauses. It has these pulses of purging. I'm not sure why that happens, but it really slows things down, especially compared to the A2L, where it purges out much faster. Going from green to white was faster as well, coming in at 54 seconds. The other reason I think it purges out faster is it just purges out less material. We'll talk about the purge waste in just a minute. In this time-lapse video, you can see the printer on the right, the A2L, is printing and going faster than the one on the left, where the one on the left, the A1, is spending more time purging out filament. Speaking of time, the A1 purge deflector came in at 3 hours and 12 minutes, where the A2L came in at 1 hour and 45 minutes. That's almost half the time when it printed the same part. I was curious to see the difference between the A2L and the X2D, the most recent printer they launched, and the X2D came in even faster at 59 minutes. I imagine if I printed this on the H2D or the X2C, it would be even faster, and even faster on something like the Snapmaker U1. But for the purpose of this video, just looking at the A1 and the A2L coming in at almost half the speed is very impressive when they look identical, besides one being much bigger. Now let's talk about the waste. On the A1, the tower came in at 7 grams, and the purge waste came in at 39 grams, giving us a total of 46 grams of waste. The A2L had the same grams for the tower, coming in at 7, but the purge waste was less at 32 grams instead of 39, which is a difference of about 18%. That seems pretty significant. Looking at the quality between these two prints, they look identical. In fact, if I mixed them up on accident, I couldn't even tell. Which means purging out a little less filament on the A2L didn't hurt the print at all, but helped with print speed. The purge amount on both these printers can be tweaked and configured, and I encourage people to do that, especially if you have the same print you're doing over and over again. The less you can purge, the better. I noticed the tower on the A2L came out kind of messy, but it didn't affect the print quality at all. I went to install this on the A2L, and unfortunately, the purge flinger is slightly larger than this part, so it doesn't fit. However, using my big brain and some flush cutters, I was able to make it work. We'll talk about why this purge flinger is bigger when we get to the differences between that purge flinger and the A1 purge flinger. By the way, we often called purge material poop, filament poop. Bambu missed an opportunity to call this a poop flinger. Dang, would have been funny. That's not the only opportunity they missed. The A2L has a lot of things that could have been upgraded. I'll talk about those things once we get to that point. One of the main obvious differences between these printers is the print size. The A2L print volume is 105% bigger, reaching 330 by 320 by 325 millimeters. Sound familiar? That's right. It's the same bed as the H2C 3D printer. They're interchangeable, which is really nice when I have a bunch of H2C 3D printers with a few different beds. If I wanted to use a different bed on the A2L, I can simply grab it off of the H2C and put it on the A2L. Since this is a bigger printer, let's print something as big as it will go on the A1 and print it on the A2 and look at the quality. For this test, we'll print these pigs. My kids love them. They are hilarious. They come in 4 parts: the body, the eyes, the pupils, and the nose. I chose this print for 2 reasons. The first one is these parts are all separated. We won't be purging out any waste and doing any color changes. I have H2C 3D printers and the Snapmaker U1. Each of those comes with more than one nozzle, so printing a part that's huge and has multiple colors with one nozzle, I just can't get myself to do it anymore. It wastes so much filament. We did it for the Anycubic Cobra S1 Max. You can see all of this waste from Grogu or Baby Yoda. After that print, I decided I won't print larger multicolor prints like that. It's just a waste. The other reason I chose to print this pig is every year our neighborhood does this little fundraiser with a silent auction, and these pigs are gonna fly. I'm not selling them to anyone, it's just a fundraiser, but the fact you can move the eyes around, it's hilarious and kids love them. The pigs just finished, let's go look at their quality. On the A1, the pig came out looking pretty good. I can see that as it got close to the nose and past the nose, the quality isn't as good. These printers are considered Cartesian printers or bed slingers, which means the bed moves forward and backward, and each movement has its own motor. That's great when you're printing smaller prints, but when you print something that's very tall, the top begins to wobble, going back and forth, going front and back, and you get what's called ghosting or ringing, and you can see that on the ears, the forehead, and even on the eye sockets a little bit. The A2L, however, did a much better job and doesn't have any ringing at all. I believe there's 3 reasons for that. The first one is it didn't go up to its max height like the A1, so it wasn't waving back and forth as much. The second reason is it has these upgraded mounts that keep it from moving back and forth. And the third reason we'll talk about when we get to what makes that printer different. It's actually a hardware and a software upgrade. You're probably thinking this already. Let's scale up that pig to as tall and high as it can go on the A2L and see if it has that same ringing effect. Making videos like this takes time, and I can't cover everything in one video. If there's something you wanted to see that I didn't talk about, let me know in the comments. Now it's time for the next test, power consumption. With power consumption, we'll test 3 things. We'll look at how much power the printer draws when it's sitting idle, just plugged in and turned on. Then we'll look at the peak power and the duration of that peak power as it's heating up the bed getting ready to print. The last thing we'll look at is the average power consumption per hour as it's going through and printing. On the A1, while it's plugged in turned on, it uses 6 watts. The A2L came in at slightly higher 7 watts. The difference between 6 and 7 is not that big, but just something to note. When we look at the peak power for the A1, it came in at 389. That was that tip of the peak. And then it averaged for about 2 minutes, 360 watts. This is on a bed that's 65 degrees and the nozzle's running at 220 degrees. The A2L came in much higher at 1,022 watts peak and an average of 960 watts for 1 minute and 40 seconds. This is on a US outlet at 110 volts. The A2L uses more power, and that's because it has a bigger bed, but even that bigger bed, it's able to heat it up faster than the A1 because of that power. Now let's talk about the average power the printer uses in an hour. And I know this isn't calculated perfectly. I'm not an electrician, but when I pull up my app on my phone using a smart plug, the average it clocks for the A1 is 95 watts. So from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, in that time, the average use is 95. That's with a 65 degree bed and a 220 degree nozzle. The A2L came in a little higher at 150 watts. And again, I believe that's because it's a bigger bed. It has to use more energy to keep it heated. Just a quick disclaimer. I'm not incentivized to push the A1 over the A2L or the A2L over the A1. I'm here to give you the facts so you can make an educated decision. I printed off the spec sheets for each printer and will highlight the most important differences. Bambu Lab sent us both of these printers in hopes that we would make a video. They don't require it, and honestly, this is not sponsored by Bambu Lab or anyone else. I don't do this very often, but having an unsponsored video means I have 100% control of the content. I can say whatever I want. That being said, I have editing fees, I have other overhead costs. If you want to support this channel and you're planning to buy the A1, the A2L, or a different printer, I've dropped links down below for both. Using those links helps us earn a small commission and allows us to do more videos where they're unsponsored and we can help pay for the channel. I'll also mention those links don't cost any extra, so using those links, super helpful. Please and thank you. Now let's talk about the noise. To measure the noise, I use this Decibel app on my phone. When there's nothing turned on and there's no noise at all, it comes in at 29 dB. That's the baseline. When we measure these printers, we'll measure them at 3 different distances, from 30 feet away, from 10 feet away, and right up close. On the A1, from 30 feet away, it came in at 43 decibels. The A2L came in at 43 decibels as well. At 10 feet away, the A1 came in at 50, where the A2L came in at 49. And then up close, the A1 came in at 58. And the A2L came in at 59. These numbers don't surprise me at all. They're like the same printer, one of them's a little bigger, the fans, everything just sound the same, and the noise comparison really didn't make a difference. If you wanted to improve the noise, they have a silent mode. I didn't test that one, but it would make it quieter if you wanted this sitting next to you while you're working and doing other stuff. Now let's talk about maintenance and daily use. Normally when we compare printers, we're comparing a Bambu Lab to the Snapmaker or Anycubic to Creality. Since these two printers are almost identical, the maintenance and daily use is very similar. The first thing we look at is switching out filament. They both have the same AMS light, so that experience is the same. To add filament or switch it out, you just slide it on and then push it up that little hole while squeezing that lever. Now, one thing to note, and this is a spoiler alert, the A2L comes out of box with an AMS connection, which means it can have the AMS or the AMS light. The AMS is better in many ways. It's enclosed, it can be heated, and it's just easier to put filament inside of the AMS versus the AMS light. Let's talk about assembly. Both of these printers were very similar when assembling. Both of them come with the top part separate from the bottom. That top part is often referred to as the gantry and the print head. To assemble them, you simply put that underneath the bed and then screw in all the screws. You also need to attach the AMS light and attach the poop flinger or the purge flinger. It took me about 18 minutes to put together the A1 and 26 minutes to put the A2L together. I actually don't know why it took longer. Looking at the videos, I didn't do a whole lot more. There is an extra wire on the A2L, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. Both of these printers come with a stainless steel nozzle. It's at 0.4 millimeters, and they're the exact same. Switching it out is so easy. All you have to do is remove the cover, pull off the silicone sleeve, and unlock the nozzle. Now let's talk about the beds. This is where things are a little different. On the A1, the build plate has a bunch of little magnets spread out evenly on the bed. This looks similar to the Snapmaker U1 build plate. I don't really mind this approach, but comparing that to the A2L, it has a magnet across the whole bed and then stronger magnets in the corners. This makes bed placing and removing a little easier. I'll also mention on the A1 has a magnet right before the slot where it's supposed to slide in the back, and sometimes it catches on that magnet and the bed isn't placed perfectly. The remedy for this is to either use two hands, put one hand on the back and slide the bed on, or I've found if I slide it in real quick, it's easier. That being said, I like the shape of the A1 more than the A2L. The A2L has the two handles in the front and the two brackets in the back, but the A1 just has one in the front, one in the back, which makes it easier to align it and lift it and place it. I like it the most on the P2S and the X2D because they have a magnet on the whole bed rather than a bunch of small magnets like the A1. This is one of many videos we're making where we compare printers head to head. If you don't like this format and never want to see videos like this again, stop watching this video right now. Huh? If you stop watching right now, I'll disappear, the channel will disappear, and you can go back to watching cat videos. Now let's talk about the app, the camera, the monitoring, and see how these two compare. The first thing I have to say is I've never found a bed slinger with a good camera position. Watching it from the side is just the worst. It's hard to see, it's not a good angle, but at the least you can see if it's printing or if the print has failed. Both of these printers have the same camera, they have the same angle, and neither of them are that good. Comparing that to a Core XY 3D printer like the H2C, you can see it has a much better view, it's a better angle of the print, and it just makes things look so much better. In addition to the terrible angle, the frames per second are the worst. We're talking 0.5 frames per second. Bambu calls this low rate camera, which, yeah, at least they're calling it how it is. It's a low rate camera. When you're watching it, it's a picture every other second. So like, psh, psh, It's terrible. I don't sit there and watch the prints, but it is nice to see and not have to wait a couple seconds to get that refresh. The lighting is the same for these printers. Again, pretty terrible. It just has the light next to the camera. It gives you what you need at the very least. The best thing about app monitoring and looking at the app usage is the app itself. Bamboo Handy has the best 3D printing app I've ever used. Anycubic, I'd say, is second, and third place, I really don't know if there is a third place. Maybe Snapmaker, they're trying to have pre-sliced models, but the thing that makes Bamboo Handy the best is they have millions of models you could go and find and send it to either printer wherever you're at in the world, as long as you're connected to internet. More and more companies are creating apps, but they're nothing compared to the Bamboo Handy app. In addition to Bamboo Handy, they have their Maker World where you have so many different options to customize and create your own parts without any design experience. Now it's time to talk about missed opportunities and things I wish I would have seen different on the A2L. After all, it is the A2L, it's not just the A1L. It should have other upgrades. The first thing is the screen. It's the same size screen as the A1, 3.5 inches, 320 by 240 pixels. The quality is not great. Does it really make a difference to me? Maybe not. But when I go from a small screen like that to an H series printer or the X2D or the P2S, it's just, why not make it a little bigger, a little better quality? I'm guessing they didn't do this to keep the prices lower. The difference between these printers is not big compared to the actual differences that you're getting. I'm also surprised they didn't increase the frames per second with the camera. Why not make it faster? All of your other printers can do it. Why not do that for this one? Something else to mention, when the printer turns on or it completes a print, the sound it makes is so loud, it made me jump out of my chair. Okay, not really. I didn't jump out of my chair, but it did surprise me. You can turn the sound completely off. I like having it on so I know when a print is done, but I wish there was some volume control, maybe even like a half volume versus whole volume. It doesn't need to be a slider. Now let's talk about what's unique on the A2L and then check the quality of that massive pig. It's almost done. So when it comes to uniqueness and differences, there's two types. There's the one you see on paper and the one that you don't see except for videos like this where you have hands-on experience and you can visually tell there's something different. We'll talk about both. The first thing that we've already talked about a little bit is it comes out of box with a port for the AMS. You don't need to buy a separate hub or a separate connection like you do for the A1, which means from the beginning, you could just use an AMS. I don't know if they'll give you that option when you purchase an A2L, but if they do, I myself would get the AMS, not the AMS Lite. I feel like that's another missed opportunity. They could have upgraded the AMS Lite or just not shipped it with one in the first place. The only advantage I can see with the AMS Lite is it could be mounted on the top, taking up less desk space. You could probably print a mount for the AMS to put on top, but that thing is a lot heavier and, to each their own, I guess. The next difference between the A2L and the A1 is nozzle clumping or blob detection. And that's why the poop flinger, the purge flinger, is bigger because it has wiring attached to the blob detector. That wiring is hidden around the back and it attaches to this little metal plate. Sometimes 3D prints go wrong. Maybe a part falls off the bed or there's cooling and just something happens and the printer, rather than printing on the part, starts printing in the air and the filament can wrap around and create a blob on the nozzle. That blob could get bigger and bigger and really screw things up. This clumping or blob detector will detect there's something there as the printer is moving over to the purge flinger and pause or cancel the print. The next thing to mention about the A2L is the upgraded extrusion system. I believe this is similar to the X2D, the P2S. It has a closed loop server extruder. What does that mean? It means as power is being monitored and pushed through to the extruder, to that nozzle, it's allowing it to get that closed loop or that feedback coming back so we can tell if there's any anomalies, like detecting friction or possibly clogs before they're happening. I didn't experience any issues with this printer, but I have experienced issues with the H2C where it's detected there was an issue and paused the print so I could figure out what's going on. The A2L has something new called adaptive vibration compensation. This is the first model in the Bambu Lab series to feature an adaptive algorithm which can reduce ghosting and ringing on large prints. We'll see how that looks in just a minute with that pig. but I believe it's why it printed that smaller pig better than the A1, because it has that adaptive vibration compensation. One quick note before we move to the next upgrade: as I've had this printer, I've already received a few updates, and I think that's important to note. Let's say you get the A2L, and it only takes 5 or 7 minutes to start a print and have it actually printing. That's probably due to an upgrade. At the time of filming this video, this printer is not released. They're still doing testing. They want it to be as good as possible, but I've already given them feedback on a couple things I noticed, and they're taking that feedback and making updates so that when it's released to the public, it's even better than what you're seeing today. That being said, Bambu Lab gives the best pre-release printers I've ever used. I've received other printers, both Kickstarter and pre-release printers, that didn't even work. They wouldn't even turn on. The next upgrade is something I've never seen before, which is a physical resonance suppression. There are 2 particle dampeners built into the frame to absorb resonance. I'm not sure how much of a difference this will make, but it's just something that's added. They're trying to make these printers do better with those tall prints. Here's a differentiator that might seem as a con. The Bambu Lab A2L bed only heats up to 80 degrees Celsius, where I believe the A1 heats up to 100 degrees Celsius. This was built by design, and that's because this printer is open, it's not enclosed. There shouldn't be any reason you need a 100-degree bed, because you won't be printing stuff like ASA or other materials that are engineering grade. They need an enclosure, they need a very hot bed. This printer isn't meant for those engineering materials. Having a bigger bed at 100 degrees, that's gonna use a ton of power, and Bambu Lab decided to just not do it. Okay, time for the biggest differentiator of this printer. This is something that people are gonna talk about for a while. It's what makes it more unique than just its size. And that is the multi-dimensional, what is it? It's a multi-dimensional creativity. Their words, not mine. What does that mean? This has a modular mount on the front. That's those slots on the front of the print head. What do they allow you to do? Well, they allow you to connect a module that carries a blade and a marker. This blade allows you to cut 2D objects, and the marker allows you to color 2D, which is interesting. I thought the H series printers were called H as in hybrid. They could do multiple things. Shouldn't the H2L be like a hybrid printer, like the A2HL? Yeah, probably not. I see why they called it the A2L. In order to use these modules, you need a different app from Bambu Studio called Bambu Suite. Let's run a few tests and see how they look. Now let's test out the cutting module. For this one, we'll throw on our logo. I started adding stickers that sponsors have sent us to our cabinet. Might as well throw my logo up there as well. Before I send this to the printer, I want to edit a few things. I don't need this border around the outside, so let me ungroup these. Then I can just click the border and delete it. Now that that border's been removed, let me go ahead and attach these together as one part. And the last thing I need to do is specify what material this is. Let me do a quick preview, make sure it looks like everything will go as planned. All right, everything looks good. Let's send this to the printer. Okay, I'm clicking on the screen to make, and you can see the logo that we're going to be drawing. I didn't have any white sticker material from Bambu Lab. This is just something I picked up from Hobby Lobby. Let's see if it works. One thing that's nice that Bambu Lab supplied is this little picker tool. You can use this to help peel off stickers either from the bed or peel them off, so you can apply transfer paper and place your sticker where you want it. There we go. Not sure if that's level, but boom. Having this module opens up so many possibilities with things you couldn't do on just a printer. It is the biggest difference between the A2L and the A1 besides, just being a bigger printer. That being said, I will use the A2L mostly for 3D printing, as I don't have as many needs for cutting leather, stickers, or drawing and coloring stuff. Those are the differences on paper. Now let's talk about the differences that I've experienced that didn't necessarily show up on paper. The first thing is the cable that attaches from the print head to the side of the printer. On the A1, it's kind of floppy, flimsy. It needs to be attached to the PTFE tubes coming out of the print head. The A2L has a cable that's been upgraded, it's more rigid, and it doesn't need to be attached to anything. The hub where the tubes connect to, those tubes are called PTFE. They're the conduit where the filament goes from the AMS light or the AMS to the actual print head. Those are attached with these little black rings, these little push pins, or whatever you call them. On the A1, those black rings are very small. They're very hard to push down with your fingers. Some people will create a separate part they can use to push them down. With the A2L, they've made them a lot bigger. They're easier to push down, and that's how you can remove the PTFE tubes, by pushing that ring down and pulling up on the tube. The last difference I noticed is when the A1 is about to start a print, it purges a little material in the front, priming the nozzle, and the A2L, rather than doing it in the front, it puts it on the back left tab. I don't know if that's really much better. I guess it's more out of the way, but that's the difference right there. The pig just finished. It's huge. When I compare the quality of this pig to the other one that's smaller, printed on the A2L, it's not as good. I can see visual ringing, ghosting near the ears and the eye sockets. When I compare it to the print from the A1, it is better. Not as good as the A2L smaller pig, but it's better than the A1 pig. There is a line in the back, and that's because when one of the filaments ran out and it went to start the next filament, the filament from the one that ran out got stuck. There was a little hook or bend in the filament and it wouldn't come out of the AMS. So this printer sat overnight for 10 hours, which meant the filament cooled, and when it started printing again, you can see a visual line. That's not the fault of the printer, it's because of the filament getting caught. Besides that line, it looks really good. I just wish it was a little cleaner up by the ears. I wonder if we can make it look better by taking off the AMS light. Let's run the print again and see. While that's printing, let's take off the AMS light from the A1 and see if that does any better. The A1 pig just finished. Comparing this to the other two pigs, I would say there's not really a difference at all. It looks like the first one it printed on the A1. It has the ringing around the eyes and the ringing especially at the top with the ears. The pig just finished on the A2L without the AMS on top, and I'll be honest, it actually looks a little worse. I'm not sure why, and I'm kind of surprised, but something I do want to mention, which could be another miss for this printer, is it doesn't have any anti-vibration feet. It's just these small pads on the bottom. Pairing that with this table, which rocks a little bit, maybe that combo affected this print more than it should have. If you think I should make a video where I compare AMS light on top versus the side, let me know in the comments. If we get enough comments, I'll go ahead and make one where I do a ton of comparisons, testing on different surfaces. For this video, it didn't really make sense, but if the interest is big enough, I'll go ahead and make another video. Do you think it's possible to have a print this big where there isn't ringing in the ears? Maybe if I slowed the print down a ton, it would have a smoother finish, but I'm going to throw this on the H2D. I want to see if it can print it just as fast, but have a better clean top. That came out looking so good. There's a reason why we have Core XY printers like the H2D versus bed slingers like the A1 and the A2L. I'm not trying to say don't buy either of these printers. They're a lot cheaper. They make sense for so many people. They're easier in a lot of ways. You can pick them up with one hand. You can't do that with the H series printers or with most Core XY printers. But look at this quality. It's so smooth. Look at the back of the ears. They're so clean. Look around the eyes. I mean, this just looks amazing. And it's so much better than a bed slinger where it's vibrating back and forth, left and right. If you need to print large prints that are very high up, I would probably pass on both of these printers and get something like the H2S, or maybe spurge a little bit and get the H2D. Now I have way too many pigs. If you'd like a small pig or a big pig, let me know. If we have an extra one, we can send it to you. These big pigs are so big. Big backs. Pig backs. That's better than big back. If you hang out with teenagers or you are one yourself, you probably know what big back is, but these guys, they're pig backs. Before giving my overall recommendation, I want to give a huge thank you to all of our paid YouTube members. There are different tiers. Each tier gives you additional perks, like a shout out on YouTube, access to videos before they're launched, or our members only videos. If you'd like to become a member, all you have to do is click this button here. Which printer should you buy? The Bambu Lab A2L or the Bambu Lab A1? Here's my recommendation. After watching this video and hearing all the differences, think about what you need. Think about what you want. Think about what you'll be printing the most of. Do you need a bigger printer? Will you ever need to cut stickers or leather or draw and color with a machine? Are you looking for the latest features like clog and clumping detection and the advanced vibration compensation? If that's the case, I would recommend the A2L. The cost difference is small enough, it's definitely worth it. If that printer is too big and you're okay with a slower filament changing printer, I'd recommend the A1. That printer has been around for a long time. I know tons of people who use it in their 3D print farms. It just works really good. These printers are great, but if you're looking for something that prints multicolor without the waste, take a look at one of these videos.